Well, good morning. Welcome to worship with Holland UCC. Whether you are joining us online or live here in person at the Momentum Center, it is such a joy to be worshiping with you today. We are a community that is progressive, engaging, and inclusive, where we believe that there is space for everyone at the table. We believe no matter who you love or how you identify, no matter where you are on your faith journey, you are a beloved child of God, and you are welcome with us here today. Today's message, we will meet several women whose actions helped to bring about justice for the oppressed. And as we start, I want to take just a moment to acknowledge that I'm going to be using that word a lot today. Women, females, something like that. And I want to acknowledge that we know gender is a spectrum and not binary. And so if this word applies to you publicly or privately, this word is for you. And if it doesn't, I invite you to take the time today to celebrate the women and the feminine energy that is in and around all of us. Now, before we do, we will start this morning the way that we start every Sunday morning. I see some of you already starting to settle. Take a moment to settle into your seat. Maybe feel the ground beneath your feet, the chair supporting your body. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. And breathe. Taking a deep breath in and exhale. We breathe in gratitude for this new day. Exhale. We breathe in hope and possibility, love and peace. And we exhale that hope and possibility and love and peace back out in the world. And as we continue our mindful breathing, we bring this meditation bowl which reminds us of the deep peace of God. Oh God, we lift our hearts in thankful praise to you. For you do not forsake the work of your hands, but you continue to redeem and restore your creation through your Son, Jesus Christ, our living Lord. By your Spirit, enable us to fulfill your purpose in our lives, and in doing so, discover true joy. Amen. Now I invite you to rise in body and spirit and join in our opening song, in the Spirit of the Living God. Peace be with you.
And also with you.
I invite you to take a moment to offer a word of peace or just a hello to those around you. You can turn to the second page in our bulletin and join me in our litany for women for the church. I will read the regular type and we'll respond together in full. Loving God, creator of women in your own image.
Born of a woman, in the midst of a world half women.
Carried by women to mission fields around the globe.
Made known by women to all the children of the earth.
Give to the women of our time
The strength to persevere, the courage to speak out, the faith to believe in you beyond all systems and institutions.
so that your face on earth may be seen.
In all its beauty, so that all people become whole, so that the church may be converted to your will in everything and in all ways.
We call on the holy women who went before us, channels of your word and testaments old and new, to mediate for us.
So that we might be given the grace to become what they have been, for the honor and glory of God. Amen. And may it be so.
Our verse for reflection this morning comes from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Our poem today, Phenomenal Woman by Maya Angelou. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, into a man, the fellows stand or fall on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say it's in the fire in my eyes, in the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breast, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed, why I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. Because I'm a woman phenomenally, phenomenal woman, that's me. Phenomenal woman, right? This time I'll invite our kids, any kindergartners through fifth graders or so, to join Miss Alicia and Miss Corey for a time this morning to learn about weaving. And I'm sorry, the rest of you, I'm going to ask you to stay here anyway. I know that sounds really exciting, and I'm excited to see what comes of this kids' time. I want to take a moment also to just invite, if any of you have been interested in joining our Kids Time program or our nursery, come and talk to me. We are always looking for volunteers. The curriculum that we're getting into this fall is really easy to work through, and it's just a beautiful curriculum. It gives you everything you need to work through a lesson. And as I said, we're just always looking for more volunteers to join our team. So you can talk to me, talk to Brian, talk to Krista. We're always happy to have a conversation about what that might look like. So just an open invitation. There's some sign-ups in the back if that's something you'd like to do. And I will invite a reader forward.
Good morning. This is your second opportunity to focus on your breath as you see in the reading. So these are words of integration and guidance by Rachel Held Evans. May she rest in peace. The spirit is like breath, as close as the lungs, the chest, the lips, the fogged canvas where little fingers draw hearts. The tide that rises and falls 23,000 times a day, in a rhythm so intimate we forget to notice until it innervates, or until a supine yogi says, pay attention. And its fragile power awes again. Inhale, exhale, expand, release. In the beginning, God breathed, and the dust breathed back enough oxygen, water, and carbon dioxide to make an atmosphere, to make a man. Job knew life as the breath of God in the nostrils, given and taken away. With breath, the Creator kindled the stars, parted the sea, woke a valley of dry bones, inspired a sacred text. So too the Spirit inhaled and exhaled in a million quotidian ways, animates, revives, nourishes, sustains, speaks. It is as near as the nose and as everywhere as the air. So pay attention. The Spirit is like a womb from which the living are born again. We emerge, lashes still wet from the watered eyes, unadjusted to the light, into a reanimated and freshly charged world. There are so many new things to see, so many gifts to give and receive, too many miracles to baffle and amaze. If only we pay attention. If only would we let the Spirit surprise and God catch our breath. And reading from the New Testament from Matthew 16, verse 13 through 20. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do the people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon, son of John. For flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
Our Old Testament reading this morning comes to us from the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 8 through 2, verse 10. Now, as we start this passage today, I want to invite you to pay close attention to something that we'll bring up in a bit. I want you to pay attention to how many times in this story God is the subject of a verb. I know I'm bringing us back to like 5th grade English, something like that. But how many times in this passage God is the subject of a verb? From the book of Exodus. Now a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, "Look, the Israelite people are more numerous and powerful than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or they will increase, and in the event of war, join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land." Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. They built cities, Pithom and Ramesses for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so that the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The Egyptians subjected the Israelites to hard servitude and made their lives bitter with hard servitude in border and bricks and in every kind of field labor. They were ruthless in all the tasks that they imposed on them. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was Shiphrah and the other Puah, "When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, kill him, but if it is a daughter, she shall live." But the midwives feared God. They did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, "Why did you let the boys live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife comes to them." So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very strong. And because the midwives had feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, "Every son that is born of the Hebrews you shall throw into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live." Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine baby, she hid him 3 months. When she could hold him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and plastered it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed him among the reeds on the bank of the river. His sister stood at a different distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river while her attendants walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid to bring it in. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him. "This must be one of the Hebrews' children," she said. Then the baby's sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Yes." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because, she said, "I drew him out of the water." For the word of God in Scripture, for the word of God among us, for the word of God within us.
Thanks be to God.
The book of Exodus is often considered to be a central text, a pivotal text of the Jewish Torah. It is the story of the enslavement and liberation, the oppression and redemption of God's chosen people. The story of God's people recommitting themselves back to God in a faithful covenant. This is, of course, the second book of the Christian Bible and the Jewish Torah, but its contents are pretty far removed from the previous book of Genesis. This is relevant to our story this morning because it shows just how far God's beloved people have come from being in this place of privilege as guests in Egypt. So our text today comes from the beginning of Exodus. However, there's a single paragraph before this, which is not included in today's lectionary. It's a short one, just telling the ending of Joseph's life at the age of 110. Joseph, of course, you might remember, was Jacob's son, Isaac's grandson, Abraham's great-grandson. He's well known for that coat of many colors. His brothers had sold him into slavery, but he soon became a valuable confidant of Pharaoh's after correctly interpreting Pharaoh's dream, which was predicting an impending and devastating famine. Joseph helped devise a successful plan to prepare for the famine, and the people of Egypt not only survived, but they thrived. In return for his service, Joseph's rekindled family were welcomed as honored guests in Egypt, and there they lived for generations. They grew and they grew and they grew, and they also thrived. Which brings us to today's passage. It starts with, "Now a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph." We have fast-forwarded so far through time in the history of the Hebrew people that this new Pharaoh doesn't even recognize them as Joseph's blessed, beloved descendants. This one sentence, seemingly pretty inconsequential, is giving us a timeline, albeit a pretty vague one, but a timeline indeed about how far removed we are. Now I want to return to that question I asked before we started today's passage. How many times in the story is God the subject of a verb? Is anyone counting? God's name was in this, I think it was 3 times if I'm remembering correctly. But it's really only once that God's name is the subject of the verb. God has one single action in the entirety of this pretty long story. It's just once. And this action is to bless the midwives who defied Pharaoh. Just one time in the story that propels forth the redemption of God's beloved people. And God has one single written action, blessing Shiphrah and Puah. To think Pharaoh was so afraid of those Hebrew boys. I want to pause to say that I do wonder if this moment of blessing is a direct result of men largely being the writers of the Bible, because how are these midwives blessed? Of course it's with families, right? Not with riches or land or status. No, they're giving big, beautiful families. Not that they maybe don't want that, but that's their reward. I'm going to chalk that one up to sort of the human side of inspired by the Spirit and written by humans. Anyway, Shiphrah and Puah. If there's one thing that I want you to take away from today's message, it's these women, Shiphrah and Puah. Because, as is likely unsurprising to any one of us, there really aren't all that many women's names recorded in the Bible. I've done some research and I came up with some varying answers. It all depends on which translation you're studying. But just think for a moment. And guess how many men's versus women's names are recorded in the Bible? I'll start with, it seems, again, depending on the translation, there's roughly 14 to 1,700 names, total names in the Bible. Roughly 14 to 1,700. How many would you guess are men's versus women's? You can say it out loud if you'd like, but take a moment to just think about that.
80%.
80%?
80.
Okay.
95%.
Okay. I was with Judy on this one. So my research tells me this. Of the 14 to 1,700 recorded male names in the Bible, about 13 to 1,600 are men. This leaves us roughly 100 to 150. Again, kind of depends on the translation you're reading here. 100 to 150. That's only really at most about 10%. And just a reminder, we're talking about the recorded history of humanity from the beginning of God's creating the world through like a century and a half after Jesus died. And only maybe 150 recorded female names. This means that the author of today's text regarded Shiphrah and Puah so highly that they are recorded alongside the likes of Eve and Miriam and Sarah, Deborah, Jael, Ruth, Esther, Jesus' mother, Mary, his aunt Elizabeth, his beloved friend, dare I say disciple, Mary Magdalene, Mary and Martha. Alongside perhaps some lesser known heroines, like those of Mala, Noah, Kogla, Milcah, and Tirzah. Does anyone who has not been ordained know those names? Most people probably don't. Theirs is an easy story to miss. It's kind of tucked into the book of Numbers. But we should always pay attention when the Bible lists 5 female names, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Twice in Numbers and again in Joshua. These are the 5 daughters of Zelophehad and the great-great-great-great-granddaughters, I think I have that right, of Joseph. When their dad died, all of his belongings were set to be left to some distant relative because he had no sons. So these daughters approached not only Moses, but certainly a room, well, they were one in the desert, so we'll say like a tent full of men. And we're talking the priests and elders, the leaders of this community, the men with the power. They approached them to dispute this injustice. In turn, Moses brought it before God. And God responded, "They're right," and proceeded to command Moses to change the inheritance laws for all of the Hebrew people. Moving forward, if a man dies with no sons, his daughters are to be given their share of his inheritance. Now, of course, that does mean if there are sons, the daughters probably don't get anything, but we'll still call this a pretty progressive move on God's part at the time. In fact, it's time and again that the women whose names we do know, many of the ones I've listed above, are not recorded necessarily for their meek and mild manners, or for leading armies in God's name, perhaps except for Deborah. Their names are recorded for moments like these. Small but bold acts of courage and defiance. As people whose greatest value was so often their relationship with a man, the bravest thing they could do was defy men, let alone defy Pharaoh, like Shiphrah and Puah. women whose bravery very easily could have cost them their lives, as women were, and really still are, killed for far less in such stringent patriarchal societies. And they knew that risk. And to think Pharaoh was so afraid of the Hebrew boys. Truthfully, it's fear. It's fear that's driving everything behind what Pharaoh does here. In his thirst for power, Pharaoh rules from a place of fear. And as we see, this will be to his demise. Now, our text tells us that Shiphrah and Puah acted out of fear too. Fear, though maybe reverence is a bit more appropriate here, of the Lord. But from their fear came empathy. I wonder if you caught a bit of irony in their response to Pharaoh too. Pharaoh had told his people that they had to do something about the Hebrews because they could become more powerful than the Egyptians. So what did the midwives tell Pharaoh when he asked why they weren't carrying out his commands? They were right. The Hebrew women are more powerful than the Egyptians. They birthed before we even get there. What do you want us to do? I have to applaud that little bit of irony there. And really, Shiphrah and Puah aren't even the only women whose actions lead to Pharaoh's downfall. Next, we'll meet Jochebed, whose name isn't even in this portion of the story, but it comes later. This is Moses' mother, who made the impossible decision between giving her baby up to be killed and what must have felt like a hopeless attempt to save him by drifting him down the very river that Pharaoh intended for him to die in. And Miriam, again, the name we don't hear, her courageous and clever Moses' courageous and clever sister, who volunteers their mother to be his wet nurse. Pharaoh's unnamed daughter, who hears the baby, recognizes that he must be a Hebrew and still takes in the child that will cause the eventual downfall of her own family. To think Pharaoh was so afraid of those Hebrew boys. And after all, how much trouble could girls be? What are they going to do? Use acts of compassion and empathy to subvert Pharaoh's fear-driven, power-lusting, oppressive regime? Oh, not a concern. In looking into the figures that I found earlier on the list of men versus women, I searched women in the New Testament. The first result looks something like this. Mary, Jesus' mother. Elizabeth, man's wife, man's sister, man's friend. Woman with ailment. Mary Magdalene. Women and children in this crowd, and women and children in that crowd, and this man's sister, you get the point. Even in our text a few weeks ago, the miracle of the loaves and fishes, you remember it was recorded that there were 5,000 men present, not including the women and children. And so it continues today. Like Jesus standing in front of his disciples, do you see me? Do you really see me? Do you know who I am? Women stand before the government, before men, before the world, asking, do you see us? Do you see us as whole human beings? I worked for a while at a place that hired a lot of men just due to the nature of the job. And we had these posters hung up, and they were intended to bring about sort of awareness and prevent domestic violence. They had a black and white picture of a woman crying, her eye had been blackened and her lips swollen, all of it looking a little bit too much like makeup. And alongside it read words something like this: she could be your mother, she could be your daughter, she could be your sister, she could be your friend. Now, the intentions were good, but I found these posters so insulting. Because as it turns out, her worth has nothing to do with her relationship to any man. A few of my male superiors tried to explain it like this: making it relational helps the guys to find it more personal. It really helps the message hit home. None of them listened when I tried to tell them that what it was really doing was perpetuating the notion that woman's worth is rooted in man's perception of her, and thus men could make a subjective decision about whether to respect or exploit or abuse women. And still we press on. In acts of defiant, courageous but quiet, like Shiphrah and Puah and Jochebed, in acts of defiance, courageous and obvious, like Miriam and Pharaoh's daughter. Kind of seems like Pharaoh should have been afraid of those girls too. With their courage beating in our chests, we press on and spend 251 Fridays on a school strike for climate, inspiring a movement. We lead 5 million people across the globe in women's marches to advocate for equity and time. We fill legislative seats, win local and state and national elections. We lead nations. And that's on top of our daily struggles, simply asking doctors to take our ailments seriously, for employers to pay us our fair wages, for work at home to be recognized. We notice together that in this passage, God had one single written action, and that word is important here, the written action, because I don't want to leave you with the impression that I think that means God is not present in this story. On the contrary, I think that God is so present, woven so intrinsically throughout, that attributing any of these actions directly to God would be redundant. God is as present today as God is in the story, in the defiance of women, in the resilience of women, in the empathy of women, and in the courage of women. Amen. You can rise in body or in spirit and join us in our song of response, Lord of the Demons.
This song you may also know it as the tune as Simple Gifts. This is the original, and that is Lord of the Dance.
Friends, we now have the opportunity to give of our offerings this morning. In just a moment, I'll pass around these baskets and a reminder that if you'd like to contribute to our facility fund aimed at helping us find a new place to call home and more space for our table to grow, please mark that on your check, or you can put it in the box in the back. You can also donate online via the Givelify app. Your gifts help us to continue to create inclusive spaces and advocate for justice here in Holland and beyond. And as always, out of God's generosity, we give, asking that God will use these gifts and us to turn this world upside down with love. Thank you, Ken, for sharing this with us this morning. Friends, we now have time to share anything that's on your hearts or minds that you would like to celebrate or have remembered in prayer. And if you're watching online, you can also share that way and read your comments as they come in.
I'll start us out. Good morning, I'm Kristen, and it's been a few weeks since I've been here, but I just want to give you a follow-up to the Healthcare Week at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation with the Remember program. And I get a little choked up, but it was a great week. We had a bunch of about 10 healthcare professionals from Connecticut all the way to Arizona, all ages, and we experienced the Lakota community members in all kinds of ways, from refurbishing the Oglala Lakota College's nursing dorm that had rickety railings and steps. So our group did that. We participated in touring the Indian Health Service. We also met with a public health nurse and learned about what is the day in the life of a public health nurse on an Indian reservation the size of Connecticut. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And then the highlight of the week was our group participating in the tribe's All Nations Health Fair. And we did education bullet points like have smoke detectors in your home, gave out smoke detectors for free. We had fire extinguishers that were squirt guns, and the kids love that. Just fire safety, a sketchy topic, STD, sexually transmitted diseases, and the highest in the nation for syphilis is on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And we passed out hundreds of condoms and had fun doing that respectfully. I mean, there was like recreational tobacco and vaping. There's ceremonial tobacco use there, so we're respectful of tobacco. And then I talked about protect your feet if you're diabetic, and we just did all kinds of things and had a great group, and saw again some of our Lakota friends and made some new Lakota friends, and attended the powwow and saw the amazing regalia and the celebration of these wonderful people. And thank you for your prayers, for holding me up during that week, because it was challenging to pull it together in all kinds of ways, but thank you. I'm just really, my heart's happy. So thanks to you all.
Well, that's great to hear. So for this collaborative effort of coming together for Lakota people in what sounds like a mutually beneficial relationship, we say thanks be to God. Hallelujah.
I'd like to ask for prayers. I don't know if this is on or not. Can you hear me? All right. Good. Prayers for our niece, Marisha McCarthy, who has had many health issues. She is only going to be 45 in September.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyways, is this any better? It is. She has stage 4 whole body cancer. And it sounds devastating, and it is devastating, but this strong young woman has hope and great faith, and of course is getting all the medical care she can get. But it's frightening for her 2 children, her husband, who is our nephew, Doug's sister Carol, who is right by their side. So for the whole McCarthy family, I just ask for your prayers. Thank you.
And what was her name again?
Carisha.
Carisha. For Carisha, for her family, for everything that they are going through, asking that God will surround them with the love and the support and the attention that they need. We say, oh God, hear our prayers.
Just thinking about our county health department, and along with all of you, just want to keep continued prayers for our county, and especially with the host picking up the story on Heather Alberta and her role in sex education and all of the progress that has been made, and now just thinking of all the people who are served by the county health department and are going to be without services.
Continued prayers for the county health department, for Heather Alberta, and the work that they're all doing. We say, oh God, hear our prayers. Did I see your hand up?
A special joy is Stephanie's sermon.
Yes.
And brings to mind all the women who have been abused and the work in our county and in the country that people are doing to end this. And there was another hate killing this morning. Women and men together, let's just keep rising up about guns that enables that behavior.
For the continued protection of all of us, regardless of gender, and for hopefully the end of gun violence being in our future, we say, oh God.
I attended a memorial service for Tom Hendrickson yesterday. And it's interesting to think about Tom. If you are a birder or part of Audubon, you knew Tom Hendrickson. But this is the 30th anniversary of the beginning of the Macatawa Greenway in our area, which is now part of the Outdoor Discovery Center. Tom was one of the 4 people, myself included and a couple of others, that were instrumental in starting the Macatawa Greenway. It's a long, long process. But Tom was there for cleanups, for river paddles, for camping trips, for education. If there was a community event about planning for preservation and conservation and trails, Tom was there. So I just want people to remember Tom. He's a great man. But he's also just a really funny guy, but he was always there for the community. And so just remembering Tom Hendrickson and all that he contributed to something that is ongoing and that will be a legacy for centuries. So thank you, Tom.
For the life and the work and the continued impact of Tom, we say, thanks be to God. Hallelujah.
Jeff Wessendorp reports his last week in Honduras is packed with gender and food challenges in 3 communities with an expert team of 8 local relief workers. Prayers for the efforts to be effective.
Prayers for the work that you are doing there, Jeff, and for these efforts, we say, oh God, hear our prayers.
As I was driving my son to college along the highway, we saw the evidence of the tornadoes that hit this week, and it's pretty devastating and must have been massive because just giant trees and were cut in half along the highway for a good long mile, and a house was completely decimated. So prayers for the people that were impacted by that, but also that such a large tornado would be in Michigan seems concerning to me. And just, thinking about global warming and climate change and all of that.
Prayers for specifically those who have been impacted by the tornadoes that swept through Grand Rapids area this past week, and more broadly for all of those who are impacted by the devastating results of climate change. We say, oh God, hear our prayers.
My name is Keith, and tomorrow morning, very likely, I'll be having a heart procedure in Meyer Heart Center in Grand Rapids to treat AFib. So it's called an ablation, where they go in and do some things to change the electrical signals in my heart. So appreciate your prayers for that. I say probably is going to happen. there's a little uncertainty, we may have to change that schedule so someone else can get in earlier. Don't know how, a little wisdom for that would be good. But just thanks for your prayers.
So prayers for clarity and wisdom, it sounds like, as well as just asking that if this procedure happens, God will be with the surgeons, those working on you, and guide their hands. Prayers for recovery that is swift and easy for you. Say, oh God, hear our prayers. Well, certainly there is more happening, both personally and in our world at large that we have not yet named. And so I'll give us a moment to lift those things up to God here in the silence. I invite you to rise in body and in spirit as we join in our doxology, which we will sing, as is our custom, a cappella. Come thou from whom all blessings flow, wake us to see more than we know. Help us claim all our gifts and power. Fill us with grace that we may flower. Come, giver of all life and peace, may we join you in earth's increase. Grant us new courage for this day, that we may find true wisdom's way. Come, Spirit, who makes all things new, show us your wider, fuller view. Teach us our wholeness now to see. Stir us to see all we may be. You can check out the back of your bulletin for series of announcements. Just a few I'll share. If you are visiting with us this morning, we invite you to fill out a visitor's card and drop it in the box in the back. A few other things just to call your attention to. Wednesday at 6:30, Pub Theology at Grace Episcopal in the lower level. Bring your own beverage. Come to talk about life and faith. Thursday, 9 a.m., coffee either on the east side of the 16th Street DeVore Bakery, if the weather is nice, or in the Big B in the Hayward Hotel. Coming up in just a few weeks, on September 10th, will be the blessing of the backpacks. If you are a student of any age, you are welcome to come, and we will send you off into the school year with a blessing. There are so many sign-ups in the back for reading and greeting and setup, for our nursery and for kids' time, for Justice Action Team, whatever it may be, there is a place for your gifts and talents here, and we humbly ask you to share them. Are there any announcements I'm forgetting?
Just want to remind people that our next Refresh dinner is in about 2 weeks, and there will be an announcement coming out on Friends of Home this week regarding our menu and our needs.
Thank you. Yep, Joan reminds us that our next Refresh meal is in about 2 weeks. Stay tuned for an announcement about the needs for the meal. Any other announcements? Great. Well, friends, now as you leave this place, let it be filled with the courage and power and unwavering empathy exemplified by Shifra and Pua to stand against all forms of oppression and injustice. Amen, and go in peace.
Excellent job, Stephanie. Well done.